Welcome to Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Erin Murtaugh loves to skate. She's an active member of the Albert Lee Figure Skating Club. She stops by to share why she loves this sport. Later in the program, we'll learn about the many ways you can adopt a child. Marla Subin and Wendy Lee Ron tell us about how their agencies help families, and Tom and Nancy Jones share their personal adoption story. And finally, we'll visit the Midwest's largest living history reenactment, the Big Island Rendezvous. We'll have all this and more. Stay tuned for Cities on the Move. Erin Murtaugh loves to float across the ice as a member of the Albert Lee Figure Skating Club. She also enjoys helping others learn to skate. Let's meet her now. Erin Murtaugh is a member of the Albert Lee Figure Skating Club. This organization's goal is to provide a skating environment that fosters both recreational and competitive skating.
I'm Erin Murtaugh. I started skating when I was 4, which was 10 years ago. I got interested in skating when I watched the Olympics when I was 2.
This early exposure to ice skating resulted in 10 years of hard work. The skating club season begins in September and culminates with an annual show in March. Experienced coaches keep practices challenging to help the skaters progress in their skills.
Practice has gotten a lot harder since go up in skill level. It's definitely longer practices too. When I was 4, I learned how to stop and start and stuff, but now I'm learning jumps and spins.
The annual show in March is the highlight of the season, centered around a theme such as Blades on Broadway. All music, costumes, props, and set decorations are structured around this theme. This production is the result of countless hours of work from the skaters, coaches, and volunteers.
The annual show is all the skaters. They are either in groups or solos, and they practice a routine, and then at the show they perform it for everyone. We practice 2 months, once a week for 2 months until the show.
Equipment and costumes are an important feature of skating.
These are my skates that I've had for 2 years, and they're really comfortable. This is my costume from last year's show for opening number, where all of our freestyle skaters skate together, and I am planning on wearing this one for tryouts this year too.
The annual show requires club members to compete for coveted spots in the program.
Tryouts are for freestyle skaters, which is the more advanced skaters, and they skate to a minute of music, and then they get judged on how well they did and get placed in different groups or solos. After tryouts, you go pick out your music and your costumes, and then about 2 months later you start practicing. You start practicing your routines for the annual show. This picture, the costume I'm wearing, I wore for my duet that I did last year in the show. And this picture is of me and my artistic group, which is grades 6 through 8 of our group, and we skated to the song Wipeout.
In addition to the annual show, some skaters also participate in competitions throughout the region.
There are a lot of different competitions that you can go to. You can practice with your coaches, and then you go to Mankato or Rochester or Duluth, places like that.
Erin also spends her time helping other young skaters in the Learn to Skate program.
The Learn to Skate is a program for smaller kids who are seeing if they're interested in skating. I would tell them to definitely try it, and if it seems hard, don't give up, because it starts out hard but it gets easier as you go on. I love skating because there's so much different things you can do on the ice.
For more information on the Albert Lee Figure Skating Club, visit alfsc.org. Today on our program, we're going to talk about adoption, and there are many ways to adopt, which we will find out, and I'd like to introduce our special guests. We have Marlis Ubin, who is with the New Horizons Adoption Agency. We have Tom Jones and Nancy Jones, who are parents who have been through the adoption process, and we have Wendy Lee Ron, who is with MinAdopt and also a mom who is adopted.
Yes.
So welcome to the program. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Let's start with agency folks and talk a little bit about what are the different ways that families can adopt children.
Well, with our agency, we are both a domestic and international, so families can come to adopt, whether it be a domestic adoption, which is a birth mother normally that's going to place through our agency. It's a voluntary relinquishment. If it's international, we are what we call a COA Hague accredited agency, so we can work with any international country in assisting that family in adopting through an international program, as long as that other program is also, that country is placing children.
Okay, and Wendy Lee, you have kind of a unique organization for adoption.
Yeah, I work for the Minnesota Adoption Resource Network, and MARN has been around for almost 30 years now, I think, and we're funded by the Department of Human Services at the state of Minnesota to provide what's called the State Adoption Exchange. And that is a service that has a photo listing of waiting children. These children come out of the foster care system. So they have history of abuse and neglect. Most of them are older. Many of them are in sibling groups. And quite a number of them are children of color. So we have the photo listing. We do a matching process between families that have completed home studies and are interested in that kind of adoption. And then we also contract with the state to provide post-adoption services as well, which include training and information and referral, helping families find or set up support groups. And training is kind of my main love. So we do pre-adoption training as well as post-adoption training. And families that do adopt from the foster care system are mandated by the state to take a minimum of 16 hours of training, because it's a different kind of parenting when you're parenting kids that have abuse and trauma histories.
Have some history there, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Tom and Nancy, there are many ways, obviously, to have a new child enter your home. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how you guys decided what type of adoption process you would go through.
Well, we decided after trying to have children on our own and not having success that we wanted to adopt a child or two, and as it ended up, we ended up with 2 children. And we met with Marlis and her group of New Horizons, and we just decided that we liked what they offered in a small town setting, in a family type atmosphere, and then there's different options where you can have an open adoption, semi-open adoption, or a closed adoption. Nancy can talk a little bit about that and how we chose what we chose.
Okay. You know, I think a lot of times when you go into the adoption process, you kind of start off going, oh, I only want closed. I don't want to have to worry, you know, what if they change their mind? And once you go through the process, you realize that it's really not anything to be afraid of. And so we did choose a semi-open adoption, which means that we have 2 adopted children, and what we were open to and what the birth mothers are open to, they kind of try and match those up. And with one of our children, the birth mother elected only to meet with us once after we adopted, and then we do send dear birth mother letters and pictures each year. On his birthday, it was twice the first year, and then it's 1 year now until age 5. And then with our daughter, it's a little bit different. We meet with her birth family twice a year, and they know our first names. They don't know where we live. They don't know what our last name is. And there's a social worker from the agency that meets with us at the same time. And sometimes we meet at a restaurant. Sometimes we meet at a park, depending on the weather. Mm-hmm. And it's really kind of neat to be able to see some of her siblings, as well as her grandparents and her mother, obviously, and one of her birth aunts also attends that. And so I think through the process, the more we've gone through it, I would really tell people it's nothing to be afraid of to look at an open or semi-open adoption.
Okay. Wendy Lee, tell us a little bit about some of the things that parents should think about if they're considering adopting from the foster care system?
Well, as I mentioned, trauma is a big sort of underlying feature of our kids. It's really important to be educated, I guess, is the drum that I beat a lot. The pre-adoption training is very specific, kind of about the different concerns that families might have about the fact that this is a different kind of parenting. We've got great kids, and they like to do the same things that every kid likes to do, but they also have behaviors that can be challenging to families. It's really important to understand about attachment and what trauma, how trauma impacts a child. It's important to know about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and prenatal exposure to alcohol and drugs, because most kids come into foster care with there's very often a chemical dependency component to their birth family's lives. That's how they get into foster care, and that has an impact. Overall, I think whether you're talking about adoption from foster care or international adoption or even infant adoption, the sort of bedrock of adoption is about loss. And people talk about adoption being a happy, wonderful thing, and it is that. But every part of the adoption picture, the birth parents, the children, and the adopting parents have some kind of issue of loss. And if families aren't willing to look at that and be able to sort of do their own process with that, it can be very difficult for everybody, especially the children.
Mm-hmm. Now, Marlis, your organization offers a number of different avenues as well. What typically happens when someone comes to your office and says, I'm interested in adopting a child? Do they come with a laundry list? I'd like a girl. I'd like her to be from China. I'd like, X, Y, Z. Or are people, like Tom and Nancy, a little bit more open to some possibilities? What steps do you walk them through?
People do come with all types of different ideas, and, they have this picture of what their child is to be. Normally when they come, they have to go through what we call an education sessions with us. And during that session, they're going to learn about many of the things that have been talked about the different types of issues birth parents deal with, whether it be alcohol, drugs. They're going to learn about international. What are some of the different things those children might come with? What types of behaviors, what types of exposures. And so they're going to learn about all the different programs that are offered. They're going to learn about some of the different issues that may come with children adopted from that background. The education sessions that we run are a beginning. We expect our families to continue to educate themselves, but through that process, and then with meeting with their social worker on a one-on-one basis, they're going to dialogue and talk about what their dreams, what their hopes are, and how that then, what would be best matched to them. Our goal is to find the very best family for the child. And in doing that, not every family that comes to us is going to perhaps be able to adopt the type of child they're saying, if that's not the best option for them and for that child.
Okay. Now, Tom and Nancy's children came to them when they were young, very young, infants. Is that still common, or do we see more and more adoptions of older children?
I think that we have both, but with New Horizons, because we do voluntary relinquishments, most of our children that we're placing at their domestic are newborns. Okay. Occasionally we'll have a birth mom who will come and has parented for a little while and discover that that's just not the best option for her or for her baby. But the most of our placements that are domestic are going to be newborns.
Okay. And give us a sense of the domestic versus international kind of, which is more, it seemed to be very popular for a while to have little girls from China. You would see quite a number of families. Is that still the case? Has the international scene changed?
Well, I think it's dependent upon the adopted family as far as which role they go into, but the international program has changed greatly in that it has slowed down. There are longer waiting lists. And many of the programs, for example, Guatemala was a country where a lot of children were being adopted. It was the second highest, I believe, for a while. And because of the Hague Treaty and the Hague Convention, Guatemala is not placing any children at this time. And so some of those places where families were adopting from and those outsourcing countries are no longer available. I think that each one has its draw and its attraction for families. Domestically, you have more interaction maybe with a birth parent, whereas internationally that component is eliminated. So families look to different places depending upon their family dynamics.
Okay. Now, Tom and Nancy, when you went in to visit with New Horizon, I'm sure they gave you a list of things. I mean, I've read on those websites where they say you must be this age and you must have been married this long, and give us a sense of kind of what your reaction was to kind of the criteria that they placed on you in order to be considered as an adoptive parent.
I remember the one thing that was a concern for us when we went into our informational meeting that Marlos was talking about was our age at the time. I think I was 43 and Nancy was 41. And so often that you hear that the birth parents want to have it go to a younger family that's maybe in their late 20s or whatever. And so I remember that was one question we had asked a social worker is, are we too old to do this? Are we going to get picked? And she said, no, probably not. A lot of it depends upon each birth mother. Each case is different, what we were looking for, things like that. And but that was my biggest concern was the age deal for both Nancy and I.
Right, and I think that was one of the things, too, that when we talked about it, the social worker said, sometimes there are birth mothers that do want older parents because of the fact that they've been married longer, they know that they're more likely to stay together, and that's a big concern. I know in one of our children, one of the reasons the parent gave their child up, they put down they wanted their child to be raised with two parents. And so that is a big issue for some of them. They want something that maybe they're not able to provide, which would be a two-parent household.
Sure. Now, Wendy Lee, do the dynamics change at all when you're dealing with adopting children out of the foster care system? Are they more lenient because the children are older and they really want to get them into a stable home? Or are they more strict because there are special needs that will have to be addressed for these foster children?
Well, in a lot of ways, the requirements, the home study format, I think, is the same, whether it's if you're adopting from foster care, international, or domestic infant. The additional requirement, I think, is the 16 hours of training, pre-adoption training. I would like to see there be a mandate for post-adoption training, too. I would love to repeat the pre-adoption training once families have the child in their home so that they really have a hands-on idea of, well, this is an area where I'm really challenged and I need some help here. MinAdopt offers trainings all around the state on a number of different topics at a very reasonable low cost so that families can get that additional training. There's a difference. There's obviously a difference in terms of the people who are considering adopting from foster care. And there has been a big shift in the way all of that is handled in terms of sort of the dynamics. The laws changed in the late 90s so that children were not, the word used is languishing. Children were not languishing in foster care. They were not moving from place to place to place. Our daughter, who we adopted at the age of 5 from Hennepin County, had been in 20-some placements before she was 4. So let me tell you, that is a lifelong disability. You can't fix that. Nor can you fix fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which, those two things often go together. So there was a federal law that passed in the late 90s called the Safe Child and Families Act, I think, that mandated that children under the age of 8 be moved into a permanency situation within 6 to 12 months. Now, there are some variables in that, obviously, depending on situations, and then also at that time came into being a program called concurrent planning, which means that foster families who were willing to take the risk, if you want to call it that, of taking a foster child with the hope of adopting them. It used to be before that when families went into foster care, they were told, don't expect to adopt these kids. This is not a gateway to adoption. Well, now it is. And so kids move through that system with far fewer moves and much better outcomes. And so that's a big change that happened and has worked to the benefit of children.
Now you all have adoptive children. What was your biggest surprise, or what surprised you most after this child or children came into your home?
Go ahead.
That's a tough question.
It is.
I guess one thing that kind of sticks out in my mind, it was when one of our kids had done something, and I put one of them in a timeout for, I think I put our son in a timeout for something, and my daughter got mad at me. That's my brother. And so it was kind of funny because both of our kids are adopted, to see, you know, it really doesn't matter where they come from. When you get a family, you bond as a family, and that those ties are there. And so I guess that was kind of one of those defining moments that points that out to you.
Great, it's great. Well, there are plenty of opportunities for families in our region, both in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota, to adopt children. MinAdopt has resources for you, as well as New Horizons Adoption Agency. So if you are interested, please feel free to contact either one of these agencies for further information. Tom and Nancy, I want to thank you for joining us as well to share your specific story. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more Cities on the Move.
Meet Mayor Ted Radke. Ted has been the mayor of Hollandale, Minnesota for 19 years. He and his wife Bertie and their daughter Megan, now grown, moved to Hollandale from Byron, Minnesota. As mayor, Ted recently presided over the opening of a new government center, which also houses Riceland Township Hall. He enjoys living in Hollandale because of the good neighbors who care. When he was a child, Ted thought he would grow up to be a farmer. He's right at home in this farming community.
The Big Island Rendezvous and Festival in Albert Lea gives visitors a first-hand experience of the life and times of the fur trading and pioneer eras in the Midwest. This annual festival provides education days to more than 3,000 area students and a great time for all. Let's check it out.
The late 18th and early 19th centuries in the United States was a time of exploration and development in the newly formed country. Here in the upper Midwest, the land was still sparsely populated. Minnesota wouldn't become a state until 1858. Held the first weekend in October, the Big Island Rendezvous and Festival celebrates this heritage through live reenactment. Rendezvous founder and organizer Perry Vinning explains.
It's a reenactment of our own heritage. It's a experience with about 1,000 participants that dress, cook, eat, live as life would have been 200 years ago or even further back. We trace American history from 1600s to the late 1800s.
Experienced participants who love American history provide the reenactment.
We have participants that visit Albert Lea for this week period or so from probably 12 states and Canada. What we try to emulate and produce is a community, a little town. And so we have all types of craftsmen. We have candle makers, we'll have coopersmiths, we'll have coppersmiths, we have blacksmiths. We'll have people do woodwork. We try to have all types of trades, of people that make things to make life more comfortable in the frontier. And then we have people that demonstrate lifestyles and show what it was like to live as a civilian mother with children or a military person. We try to do a cross-section of society from the 17 and 1800s.
One such participant hails from Germany. Jörg Rochlitzer is visiting the United States as a sociology professor.
It's kind of my hobby to do what we call the historical thing of tintype photography. Before the tintype photography, like daguerreotypy and other ones, it was very expensive to have a picture taken. Now think about in the dimensions of the 19th century, if you would have a daguerreotype picture taken, it may cost you $10, $15, where people maybe made about $15 to $20 a month. Now, with the development of the tintype process, what happened? They cut down the cost to 25 to 50 cents. Take a picture, develop it, fix it, finishing it, and you could have your picture. And you could have it maybe in an hour or in two. You could have a picture in this time. I mean, for this time, that was high tech. So today when we think about, hey, isn't it nice to have a 10 megapixel camera? Yeah, that's cool, that's good. And this time, having a tintype, yeah, that was good. And actually in this time, there was an expression, you could bet your tintype, because it was something precious.
In addition to being fun, as a sociologist, Jörg recognizes the importance of preserving history as well.
Every society has its certain roots. when we as a society actually lose these roots, how we became successful in a country, then what will happen, short or long, we will end up like the Roman Empire or the dinosaurs. So as long as we, and in sociology we have an interesting theory about this, about you have to look back in history, see what they did in this time period, learn out of it to get some good ideas for present to influence the future positively.
The Big Island Rendezvous and Festival occurs over a period of 4 days. 2 days are devoted to educational programs for school children, and 2 days are open to the public.
These education days is a very important part of what we do. It is important that children see exactly what it was like to live in the wilderness and try to survive. You couldn't go down to the convenience store and buy a carton of milk. You couldn't go get a pound of hamburger at a grocery store. You had to hunt for your food. You had to grow your food in your garden. You had to work hard to even exist. And so we have these first 2 days of the event. We'll have 3,000 children over 2 days, and we give them that taste of what it was like.
If you love immersing yourself in the past, the festival is a great opportunity to experience an exciting time in our history.
Having everybody here and seeing them enjoy each other's company and learning from each other, I guess I just enjoy watching the camaraderie between all the participants and the public and their questions. Just walking around is just great for me.
Cities on the Move is on the web. Make a comment, ask a question, or share your good idea by visiting our website at ksmq.org.
Next week on Cities on the Move, Jonathan Allen will join us to talk about how we can all live more simply. We'll pay a visit to the Rotary Cannonball in Mason City. This restored 457 engine is full of the sights and sounds of the railroad. And finally, Rosie Schuler and the Helmbrichs will talk about what it's like to host a foreign exchange student and how you can still become a host family yet this year. Please join us Tuesday, October 27th at 6:30 p.m. on KSMQ for another edition of Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Good night.
Production of this program is made possible in part through a grant from the Blandin Foundation.